Once I've got to the top of the cuff on my sock, I need a flexible cast off in order to make sure that the cuff will stretch over the foot. One of the methods of sewing or working a flexible cast off is what's known as the sewn cast off. This cast off is worked with a tapestry needle, and you need to cut the yarn before you start. So to do this cast off you need at least 2 to 3 times the circumference. So I've done at least 2 circumference, and I'll add a bit more of yarn, and then I'm going to cut the yarn to now work the cast off. So the first thing I need to do is thread it into my tapestry needle. This cast off can be used as a decorative edge as well. It's quite a straightforward method of casting off. I've got the first 2 stitches on my left needle here, so I'm going to go through both stitches from right to left with my needle, and then I'm going to come back to the first stitch on the needle, and I'm going to go through it from left to right as if I was going into it as a knit stitch. Pull the yarn through and drop the loop off the needle. So I'm going back to, I go through 2 stitches, the first 2 stitches from right to left as if to purl, then I go back through the first stitch from left to right as if to knit, pull the yarn through and drop the stitch off the needle, through the 2 stitches from right to left, and then back through 1 from left to right and drop it off the needle. So apart from that very first stitch, every stitch has had the yarn pass through it twice. So as you can see, I'm going through this stitch for the second time and this stitch for the first time, and then I'm going to go back through the first stitch again to take it off and drop it off. This cast off, you can make it as loose or as tight as you like. You can see here I'm not pulling the yarn tight, I'm making sure it stays loose as I'm working, and you can adjust how tight you work as you're going around. So I'm making sure I've got plenty of stretch here before I work the next pair. Go back through the first stitch, drop it off the needle, and then I'm giving it a bit of a stretch just to make sure that I'm not going to pull it too tight. This cast off does give you what looks like a little purl ridge around the top of the sock, but I quite like the finish. I don't mind that it's not identical to the rib. So you'd continue on round, all the way round until you get to the end of the sock. When you get back to this last stitch here, you can then go back and connect this last stitch with the very first stitch, which only had the yarn through it once. So when I come to this last stitch, I would go through this one and this stitch, and then back through the first stitch to drop it off the needle, and then I would be able to sew my yarn in. So that's the sewn cast off for the top of the sock.